Hey, hope you're doing well. I'm going to try to just cut to the chase with this one. I'm going to try to pack a lot in this real in a short amount of time, but there are innumerable people you could go and listen to other than me. So, uh, what about my story with healing, addiction, recovery, trauma, spirituality? What about my experience may be worth listening to rather than the next person? That's totally up to you, but let me just paint a picture for you how I got to be me, how I've gotten to the point of my life and the mindset I have about things. um, so when I was born, don't know what happened, but I was not breathing. This was the story I was always told. Born to addicts. Was taken away for a couple days. Doctors brought me back a few days later. This was according to my parents. uh, Said I had died. Um, they didn't know what happened, but I was very likely going to grow up to have severe brain damage. I always joked that I walked away mostly unscathed, but um, my parents never investigated that. I don't know if they were afraid that something would come back on them due to their negligence or whatever. So that set me off on an interesting path, having a near death experience right at birth, coming from the other side into this world and getting ripped right back. For those who know, there's a lot of accounts of people having near death experiences where it leaves them open to other things. So, right from the get go, um, my very first memory that I've always looked back on as my first memory caused quite a rift within me. I was probably 4, and I recall this as my grandmother trying to explain the idea of heaven to me. She was a religious person, and she tried to explain heaven to me at, again, the tenderish age of 4. And I had like an existential crisis as a little kid, and I remember coming to in her shower, like in the fetal position, bawling my eyes out, thinking about the concept of going up into the sky after this life forever with everybody that we know. It sounded like a nightmare to me. So that subconsciously created this rift in my brain that anytime someone would talk about God, up until it was probably like 28 or 29, I just automatically tuned it out. Ain't that some diabolical magic right there? So I never claimed atheism or anything like that, because something intuitively, my whole life, even before I had new concepts of spirit, soul, that just, I just felt like I knew there was something more. And that even though I couldn't reconcile my understanding and situation with this idea of God, I knew that atheism was never part of the question. So that's a that's a recipe to create one heck of a nihilistic outlook. So, anyways, um, as a kid growing up, I would have very strange dreams that I've come to, in more recent years, realize weren't always just dreams. Um, I'll explain more about that later. Again, I'm trying to just give the brief overview of why my um, takes on some of these things might interest you and be worthwhile listening. And forgive me too, because the brain damage at birth, all the head injuries. I've been started using substances and abusing substances at 13. I'm 34 now. Got addicted to opiates and opioids when I was 15 or 16. Um, and I, still struggle with that. I've been clean since 33, thankfully, but that's something I'm always going to be working on. But so you know, experiencing supernatural, paranormal things most of my life, people don't believe you about. Um, Having a deep connection to my intuition my whole life, and feeling like I knew things that I shouldn't know, to the point where you try to go along with society and get by, and join the groups of friends that we are set within growing up in school. So I learned to convince myself that to not listen to my heart and intuition, essentially. Um, and that caused for a greater rift and dissonance within me, which stronger lent to my urge and desire to drown out my feelings. Also, because I interact with this world, my sensory interception and interface is extremely high input, high octane. Um, People like to say, I'm an empath. Like, there are some of us who do seem to have are just very sensitive to picking up the energy of others around us, and it can be very confusing when you're not even aware of this concept. And so you're constantly around groups of people and you're picking up a flood of energy, and you think you're always trying to figure out why you're feeling the way you do and what's going on, thinking it must be coming from you internally, because how else could you be picking up um, energy vibrating from another person, you know? So anyways, all of this, just perfect recipe to create an addict. Then, years into this, um, also too, my dad, he was ex-military, um, and had gotten kicked out of the military. Uh, I don't know exactly what happened. He told me he almost murked his drill sergeant for doing stuff with my mom. Um, and that was right around when I was conceived in Colorado. He almost went to uh, military jail or whatever, but they kicked him out of the military and made him leave. He had to leave the state. I don't know if any of that's true. Again, this is just what my parents told me. This is the story I was brought up on. And, because I lived through that experience, like my dad always used to tell me, like, he's like, I don't know what saved you that day, but he's like, you're here for a reason. You have an old soul. And I never knew what that meant as a kid. Him and I aren't on good terms. Uh, and my mom, she passed away from a Fetty OD a couple years ago. Rest in peace, Mom. I love you always. And one of the reasons I continue to try to stay sober um, is in her honor. Because when I was around 15, 16, my parents got really bad with their addictions. My dad took off to Florida and just never came back. My mom started sleeping with one of his friends. So he just never came back. Everyone stopped paying the mortgage. I was in 10th or 11th grade. Thought it was cool at the time, making the best of it, getting addicted to morphine. My mom's giving me morphine and Valium to compensate for her not being a mother, trying to be a buddy to me. And, it seemed all cool and stuff and fun and games until the bank foreclosure notices started showing up at the door. Now, it's happened 3 times before. I finally came home from school one day and to a third notice and locks on the house I grew up in, because I was the only one there. And so that was something to deal with in high school. Thankfully, a friend and his mom took me in. Anyways, school went on. Things got crazier. And I backtracked to my dad in the military aspect too, just because he was always very more conspiratorial minded, you could say, and kind of raised me as such. So I've always been very fringe minded to begin with, and never into politics, into religion and stuff like that. But again, never claimed atheism. It always just seemed absurd to me. But around my mid-20s, doing my own rabbit hole diving and coming across some of the more heart-wrenching aspects of what they do to children, you could say. Started going down some of those rabbit holes, and it broke open a dam inside of me and affected me to a point where it caused me great distress. And I had to walk away and step away from all of those rabbit holes for probably close to a year. But it was like it woke something up in me. Now, I don't have proof that I was, that certain types of abuse happened to me as a kid. But when I sat with I started having flashbacks. I started having memories come back to me. And I sat with these and let this kind of unfold for years because, false memory syndrome is a thing, even though I don't think anybody would really want to create false memories and a false narrative of that happening to themselves for any reason. But it is possible. The mind works in funny ways. So I sat with that and tried unraveling that for many years and didn't start talking about it for years. The more the flashbacks and memories started to come back to me. So in the process of all of this, I began to realize that was one of the root wounds that was causing my constant addiction and my self-destructive, self-sabotaging tendencies. We have all these traumas that you might not even be aware of. So how are you supposed to begin dealing with that and reconciling that? If you're trying to figure out your addiction, like, you're gonna have to dredge up some really painful things, and amidst that process, like, going through that and working through a lot of those things will likely break you in their own ways, and very often does lead to relapse. That's one of the reasons I think they say relapse is part of the process. I apologize if this is so meandering. I gotta leave for work in a couple minutes, but I was feeling inspired to talk. And when I'm feeling inspired to talk, I'm trying to just make myself do it, because I can talk myself down out of something very easily, and just won't follow through. So yeah, I'm dealing with all these flashback memories, starting putting pieces together. And then I finally started asking my sister about stuff, and she said some things that caused further triggers of remembrance. Then a couple years ago, I ended up asking my dad. This was one of the last times we talked. And at first, he very aggressively denied it, saying no, we never would have left you alone with that person, indicating that he knew this person was someone not to leave kids alone with. And then I'm like, oh, are you sure about that? Because you definitely did, on more than one occasion. And then it went from angry, aggressive denying to, oh, well, maybe we did. And then he sent me a text after that conversation telling me I still have the message too, said, quit your crying. You've been crying since the day we brought you home. Imagine trying to open up to your father about being sexually abused and getting that type of response. And then it kind of made me wonder about him too, and because he had done some things to me when I was a child too. He broke my leg. I remember being burned with cigarettes. One of his drunk friends, which is weird because then I used to love putting cigarettes out of myself. I still have, I don't know if you can see them. Oh yeah, sorry, nudity. It's 2 cigarette burns from over 10 years ago. Anyways, I really got to get going, but I want to try and wrap this up. So amidst all of this, trying to find myself and get into recovery and figure out the root cause of my addiction led to further pain. But because I could never open up to God, I finally reached a point where I said, shut up, dude. It's time to shut up and listen. You don't know anything. Let's say we don't know anything. Let's start from scratch. Let's start listening to what some of these people have to say about God. Now, I don't follow doctrines or dogmatic religions. I respect everyone for their religious beliefs. I like the idea of omnism, that not any one religion holds the truth, but all religions and mystical traditions and teachings hold deep, essential spiritual truths that are inherent in the construction of this reality. God, this is not going the way that I wanted to, but I'll still probably post it just because. So it led me to opening opening up to God, but I have my own relationship with God, and that's what to me religion is one's intimate personal relationship conversation with their understanding of the creator, of something higher than themselves. So that is one thing AA and NA was absolutely right about, is developing uh, some type of intimate relationship with a higher being. Call it whatever you want. People go to war over names of this idea. Ain't that something crazy? But oh God, yeah, I'll probably post this anyways, but there's much more I want to talk about, because this has just led, all of this stuff that I've said has led to a life of supernatural experiences, paranormal experiences, just unexplainable phenomena. And amidst all of this, realizing my sensitivity to the world around me started to make sense as to why I turned to opiates largely and downers, because it stopped the noise, the sensory noise from the world around me. And I always perceived that heightened sensory activity as a curse. And now I've come to understand it, and I'm still understanding it deeper and deeper, as a blessing. And I'm learning to hone this gift of mine. But yeah, I will continue. I will make another video that will be a part 2 of this. I think we'll get a little more into some of my paranormal experiences, supernatural experiences I've had, ghosts to experiences with plasma entities, UFO experiences, seeing things that should be physically impossible in the way based off the physics they mainstream science teaches us. I've seen some really anomalous stuff happen with the moon, and other people were there with me to verify this. But anyway, all of this to say, don't just believe me, but I am someone who has been seeking and, have felt left out to dry by the people I've my own family at like 15. I've been on my own since 15, and I am not really close with any of them. But all of this to say, have hope, because I never would have imagined, even just a couple years ago, being as hopeful as I am for the future and my recovery and healing, and being able to share and spread messages that may connect with other people. I know this is why I've been spared. It does make you feel a little bit of survivor's guilt, like, why me? Why all these other people I had to lose, but I'm still here? Well, you can drive yourself crazy wondering that, but I'd recommend take it as a sign, not that all those other people deserved or were meant to go, but I am in fact still here for some reason. And it's not to live for myself. It is to share these messages. It is to share the hope. It is to share what the other side of hell can look like. The other side of recovery. I'm not saying I'm recovered. I'm going to be recovering till the day, till my final breath. I'm going to be working at this. But that makes me happy. That's beautiful. That this journey never has to end. It only ends when you want to stop digging. Life can go deeper than you could ever imagine. Okay, my dudes. And so yeah, this was probably a bit of a schizo ramble, whatever. I'm not. Think whatever you like about me. I don't care. I have love for you. I might not like you. Don't have to. But what I do know is I hope you have a great day, and we're gonna get out of here now.